Okay, let's get into today's topic. This past weekend, DFL conventions across the state continued with Jake Johnson earning our DFL endorsement in CD1, Representative Betty McCollum, the dean of our congressional delegation, being re-endorsed in CD4, and Trina Swanson being endorsed in CD8. You of course, heard from Doug Chapin on the call last Friday. Today, we have the opportunity to talk to one more name on that list and introduce you to the person who's going to show Western Minnesota what real leadership looks like and how you show up for Minnesotans. For years, CD7 has been represented or misrepresented by Michelle Fischbach, and she has signed on to virtually everything Donald Trump has done to make life harder and less affordable for farm families, rural hospitals, and small towns that make up that district. She really has backed the tariffs. She really has voted for that big, ugly bill that's going to gut rural hospitals. And of course, she continues to support the war of choice in Iran. Just this morning, I looked at the average cost of diesel fuel. Farmers are about to start planting in western Minnesota, and I looked at the average cost of diesel fuel, and it's skyrocketed just in the last week, even more. $5.17 a gallon, I think it is. That input pressure for farmers is just absolutely unconscionable, and unfortunately, Representative Fischbach is directly responsible for supporting that war of choice in Iran. Today, joining us is Erik Osberg, our DFL-endorsed candidate in Minnesota's 7th Congressional District. Welcome and congratulations on your endorsement, Erik.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Erik, you've had quite the journey to get here. Construction sites, sports broadcasting, financial services, economic development. That's not a typical political resume. Tell us a bit about who you are and what that winding path taught you about the people of Western Minnesota.
I think to summarize who I am, I'm a true Minnesotan. I fish, I hunt, I grew up in Uppsala, Minnesota, if anybody knows where that is. I live in Wadena, Minnesota. My wife and I have lived here for the last 20 years. We lived in Duluth for a spell, love Duluth, right? Like I'm a born and raised Minnesotan. And what that winding path has taught me is that we have a lot more in common than we do differences, right? When you get to the local level, when you boil it down to the communities of Western Minnesota, we have shared values, we have a shared vision for the future, and we just I believe we just need somebody to be able to unite that, and then we can create the change we seek.
Absolutely. You spent the last 8 years working in economic development, specifically trying to change the narrative around rural communities. What made you decide that the work you were doing from the outside wasn't enough and that you actually needed to go to Washington yourself?
Well, it was a more, when this began, it was more, my personal take was, if not me, who? If not now, when? When I looked at the last couple of election cycles, the DFL candidate hadn't emerged until spring of the election year. And I looked at the work, CD7, for those that aren't familiar, it's basically Iowa to Canada, right? And so there was a ton of work that needed to be done, just infrastructurally, connection wise. And so in the beginning, it was a, if not me, who? If not now, when mentality. And that, and then the real triggering moment, if you will, was the results of the 2024 election. I warned my wife. I said, if this goes poorly, the 2024 election, presidential election, if this goes poorly, I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is. And immediately we got to work in December of 2024 is when we started to build the vision, build the dream, build the team. And so that's kind of what got me to go from rural economic development to the path to Washington.
Fantastic. CD7, as you mentioned, covers a massive stretch of western Minnesota from Kitson County, shout out to my friends in Halleck, down to Pipestone, across issues in agriculture, healthcare, public schools. These are communities under real pressure right now. The affordability crisis is felt every single day by families in western Minnesota. What do you hear most from people when you're out there? And what do you think a representative who grew up in rural Minnesota can do that some others won't?
Well, the first thing that a rural candidate can do is it can show up, right? Like that you had mentioned it earlier. I've said this before, that the bar is pretty low. I've had people say, if I'm just accessible and responsive, like that would be an improvement on our current situation, right? And so what a rural candidate can do, someone with rural roots, is we can roll up our sleeves and get to work, right? Like I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't farm, but I've worked for farmers. Like I've had farmers in my financial services background. I've had farmers as clients, right? So I understand how to help them achieve and protect and all those things. So a rural candidate, what we can do for people is just keep showing up in places that others have not, right? You had mentioned Kitson County. I was back in April of 2025. I was in Kitson County. There was 75 people. You remember those empty chair town halls, right? I was the only one that showed up, and there was 75 people in Kitson County, Wood Lake, Minnesota. This was April of 2025, and so I think what we can do is just keep showing up, just keep listening, and to answer your other question about what one topic has really risen to the top, and I didn't anticipate this, but the Constitution, right? And the good news is that seems to be a unifying document, right? And so as we embarked on this tour and we started talking with people, it was constitutional concern, constitutional concern, constitutional concern, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, First Amendment, you know what I mean? The list goes on. So, and then the other thing, the last thing I would say about one of the big issues is corruption, just rampant corruption at the federal level, cronyism, nepotism, decency, kindness, just getting back to core human decency. Again, if I can be accessible and responsive and be decent in doing so, that's an improvement.
That's fantastic. You've been pretty open about the math in CD7. We know it's a tough district. Some people want to write it off, but we won't, right? Because on February 3rd, precinct caucuses happened. We had thousands of people show up in CD7, one of the largest turnouts we've ever had. In fact, it's the largest we ever had in CD7. And here's something that's remarkable. 25% of the people who showed up in CD7 for precinct caucus night were independents. And wait for it, 20% were Republicans. 45% of the people who showed up in CD7 were not active Democrats, but they're freaked out about exactly what you just said, Erik. They're concerned about the rampant corruption in Washington, the self-dealing that's happening every single day, and they've had it. They want new representation. You've also talked about doing the work, as you just said, about fish fries in all 37 or 38 counties and meeting people where they are. Why do you think that approach matters so much right now?
I think it matters because of the opportunity you identified and with the math and a real quick story. So we had a fish fry in Sibley County, and it's way down towards the bottom of the district, and we had it at a rod and gun club. Okay. So again, trying to go places where not trying to preach to the choir, so to speak. And so I was told afterwards there was at least 10 Republicans in the room, and we had a civil conversation, and we did the thing. And what I heard secondhand was as they were leaving, they would turn to their friends and say, well, he's not that bad. He's not that bad. Right. And so we talk about systemic change, change is one tick at a time. And if I can meet with a group of independents or Republicans and they walk away saying, well, he's not that bad. Right. Like that's moving the needle just a little bit at a time. And so, that's why it's important is to have those go into those tough places, take the tough questions and be civil and decent about it when we have difference of opinions.
I love that. You also describe your campaign as unknowingly optimistic as you look at Western Minnesota right now, the farm families, the educators, the healthcare workers, the small business owners dealing with tariffs. What is actually giving you hope, and what do you hear from them that gives them hope?
What gives me hope is the people that keep showing up. I was in New London last night, and we had an event in November in New London, and there was 150 people. And Julie Henslin just announced her run for the House in Candy, Ojai County, and there was I had to leave early, but there was a packed house, right? And attitudes are contagious. Energy is contagious. When you're in a room full of energized people, that's what gives me hope, right? Like if I've been going around for the past year and it was me and 3 other people, like I wouldn't have a ton of hope right now. But the fact everywhere we go, people just keep showing up. And I truly believe, I believe in local solutions to local problems. But I also believe that the federal government plays a huge role in that, even just from a funding standpoint, from an opportunity standpoint. So again, identifying these folks, empowering them to create local solutions to local problems. And what gives me hope is the fact that people keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up, keep doing the work. That's what keeps me going.
Erik, thank you so much for joining us today. I have to tell you, you are one of the hardest working candidates that I've seen. You have one of the largest districts. You're driving the tires off of your vehicle, making the rounds. I appreciate all the effort that you're putting into this. I believe in you, and I believe in your campaign, and I believe my eyes when I see all those people showing up to support you. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate you.